The bomber will always get through. Those words, spoken by Stanley Baldwin in 1932, would prove prophetic just a few years later, as the skies of Europe and the Pacific filled with the thunder of heavy bombers. These weren't just airplanes, they were flying arsenals, symbols of national will, and instruments of destruction that could reach out and touch the enemy in a way never before imagined. From the industrial heartlands of America and Britain to the bustling factories of Germany and Japan, thousands upon thousands of men and women toiled day and night to produce the aircraft that would come to define the aerial battlefields of World War II. They were building more than just machines. They were building hope. Hope for victory, hope for an end to the bloodshed, hope for a better tomorrow. And at the controls of those bombers sat young men, barely old enough to shave in some cases, who climbed into the cramped cockpits knowing full well that they might not come back. This is their story, the story of the aircraft they flew, and the impact they had on the course of the Second World War. She was a majestic sight, the B-17 Flying Fortress, with her sleek lines, 4 powerful engines, and that distinctive tail. You couldn't mistake her for anything else. Developed in the 1930s, the B-17 was designed to be a strategic bomber, capable of delivering a heavy bomb load from high altitude. She had a crew of 10, each man with his own specific job, all working together to keep that big bomber in the air and on target. Now, I know what you're thinking. 10 men crammed into that fuselage hour after hour on a mission over enemy territory. Can you imagine the noise, the tension, the fear? These boys were young, many of them just teenagers, but they stepped up, did their duty, and faced the enemy with courage and determination. The B-17 was built to take a punch. She was armed with 13.50 caliber machine guns, and when those guns opened up, they put up a wall of lead that few enemy fighters could penetrate. But even the toughest bird could be brought down, and many were. The skies over Europe were filled with flak and enemy fighters, all trying to stop the B-17s from reaching their targets. But the flying fortresses kept coming, wave after wave, pounding enemy factories, airfields and supply lines. The B-17 became a symbol of American air power, and her crews, those young men who climbed into her cockpit, they became heroes. Think about the missions they flew, like the Schweinfurt-Regensburg raid in August of 1943. Over 300 B-17s took off that day, aiming to cripple the German ball-bearing industry. They faced heavy losses, but they pressed home their attacks, delivering a blow that sent shockwaves through the German war machine. The B-17 was more than just an airplane. She was a symbol of hope. As the sun set over Europe, another bomber took to the skies, shrouded in darkness, its 4 engines a menacing hum in the night. This was the Avro Lancaster, the workhorse of the RAF Bomber Command. Designed by Barnes Wallis, it was a heavy bomber that could carry the fight to Germany. It could carry a heavier bomb load than any other aircraft at that time. Its calling card was the Upkeep Bouncing Bomb, designed to destroy the Ruhr Valley dams. Operation Chastise required Lancasters to fly low over water, aiming with pinpoint accuracy. On May 16, 1943, 19 Lancasters took off from RAF Scampton. Led by Wing Commander Guy Gibson, they breached 2 dams, causing widespread flooding. The cost was high, with 8 Lancasters lost and 53 men killed. But the raid's impact was undeniable, cementing the Lancasters' place in history. The Dam Busters raid was just one of many daring missions flown by the Lancaster. Night after night, they braved enemy flak and fighters to strike at Germany. Bombing factories, railroads and oil refineries, they disrupted the German war effort. The Lancaster's ability to carry heavy loads made it vital in the Allied arsenal. But its legacy is not just about bombs and destruction. Now, let's talk about a real workhorse, the consolidated B-24 Liberator. This bomber may not have had the sleek lines of the B-17, but she was a rugged, dependable aircraft that saw action on every front of the war. From the freezing skies over the North Atlantic to the scorching deserts of North Africa, the B-24 was there, delivering bombs and pounding the enemy. Over 18,000 B-24s were built during the war, more than any other American bomber. She could carry a heavy bomb load, fly long distances, and operate at high altitudes. Her crews called her the boxcar, but they respected her toughness and her ability to get the job done. She could be configured for a wide range of missions, from high-altitude bombing to maritime patrol. In the Pacific, B-24s were equipped with radar and sank countless Japanese ships. In Europe, they flew daylight bombing raids alongside the B-17s, targeting German industry and infrastructure. The B-24 was also used extensively in the airlift of supplies to China over the Himalayas, a treacherous route known as the Hump. These missions were some of the most dangerous of the war, with crews facing extreme weather conditions, high altitudes, and the constant threat of Japanese fighters. But the liberators kept flying, delivering vital supplies to the Chinese forces fighting the Japanese. The B-24 may not have had the glamour of the B-17, but she was a vital part of the Allied victory. Now we've talked about the Allied bombers, but what about the other side? The Luftwaffe, Germany's air force, had some formidable bombers of their own, and none more recognizable than the Heinkel He-111. With its twin engines and distinctive angular wings, the He-111 was a symbol of German air power in the early years of the war. The He-111 first flew in 1935, and it quickly became a mainstay of the Luftwaffe. It saw action in the Spanish Civil War, where it gained a fearsome reputation for its bombing accuracy. But it was during the Battle of Britain that the He-111 truly made its mark. Night after night, He-111s, along with other Luftwaffe bombers, pounded British cities in a relentless bombing campaign known as the Blitz. The goal was to break the spirit of the British people and force them to surrender. The He-111 became a dreaded sight and sound over London and other British cities, its engines a constant reminder of the terror from the skies. The He-111 was a relatively fast bomber for its time, and it could carry a decent bomb load. But it was also vulnerable to enemy fighters, especially as the war went on and Allied air defenses improved. The He-111's defensive armament proved to be inadequate against the increasingly sophisticated and determined Allied fighter opposition. Despite its vulnerabilities, the He-111 soldiered on throughout the war, serving on the Eastern Front, in North Africa, and in the Mediterranean. It was used in a variety of roles, including as a transport aircraft, a glider tug, and even as a makeshift missile launcher. The He-111 was never as technologically advanced as its American and British counterparts, but it was a reliable and adaptable aircraft that served the Luftwaffe well for much of the war. Now, we shift our focus to the Pacific theater, where another bomber was making its mark, this one a product of the burgeoning Japanese war machine. This was the Mitsubishi G4M, known to the Allies by the codename Betty, a twin-engine bomber that struck fear into the hearts of Allied sailors and soldiers alike. The G4M was designed in response to a Japanese military requirement for a long-range bomber that could outrun enemy fighters. The result was an aircraft that was sleek, fast, and deadly, capable of carrying a heavy bomb load over long distances. The Betty made its combat debut in the early days of the Pacific War, striking targets in the Philippines, Malaya, and Singapore. It quickly gained a reputation for its speed and long range, often appearing seemingly out of nowhere to deliver its deadly payload. One of the G4M's most infamous missions was the attack on the American fleet at Pearl Harbor. While the main attack force was composed of carrier-based aircraft, G4Ms from Formosa, Taiwan, participated in the second wave, targeting airfields and infrastructure on Oahu. However, the Betty had a critical weakness: its lack of self-sealing fuel tanks and armor protection. This made it highly vulnerable to enemy fire, and Allied fighter pilots soon learned to exploit this weakness, often targeting the G4M's fuel tanks with devastating results. Despite its vulnerability, the G4M remained a potent weapon throughout the war, serving in a variety of roles, including as a torpedo bomber, reconnaissance aircraft, and transport. From the B-17 Flying Fortress to the Mitsubishi G4M, these aircraft represent the cutting edge of technology during World War II. Each played a crucial role in the conflict, embodying the industrial might and military ambitions of their respective nations. The B-17, with its iconic design and long-range bombing capabilities, became a symbol of American resilience. The Avro Lancaster, a workhorse of the RAF, carried the fight to the heart of Germany, showcasing British engineering prowess. The consolidated B-24 Liberator, a true testament to mass production, served on every front, highlighting the global nature of the conflict. The Heinkel He 111, a harbinger of terror during the Blitz, demonstrated the devastating impact of strategic bombing, and the Mitsubishi G4M, with its speed and range, showcased Japan's early dominance in the Pacific. As we reflect on these Sky Titans, we remember not just the machines, but the men who flew them. The young men who climbed into those cramped cockpits, facing flak, fighters, and the unknown. Their courage and sacrifice helped shape the course of history. This video is just one part of our series exploring the technology and warfare of World War II. Be sure to subscribe and join us as we delve deeper into the conflict that shaped the modern world.